My wife and I, 36, 37, lost our son Ryan 3 years ago when he was 11. Before he was born, my wife's parents gave us a large sum to start up on his college fund, and we've been putting money on the side for years so that he can use it once he went to college. Unfortunately, he never got the chance and we haven't touched that money since. It's taken time, but with a lot of therapy, we made peace with our loss. We have even started talking about trying to have another baby next year. My sister and her family came to our house Sunday morning and we were talking about my nephew Steven now being in his last year of high school. It brought up questions about what his plans were after graduating, and he said college. Though he's not sure what he wants to study. When my nephew wasn't around, my sister mentioned they have been worrying about how they'll afford college for him. His grade point average is average and he doesn't do any activities outside of his studies, so they say they don't think he'll have much of a chance with scholarships. He'll have to rely on student loans and financial aid. My sister mentioned Ryan's college fund and how it would be a huge help if Steven got that for himself. We were caught off guard and didn't know what to say. With talks about having a baby, we decided we wouldn't touch that money for now and had to tell her no. We explained weren't sure if we want to use that money for future baby expenses or if maybe that will be our child's college fund to use in the future. My sister became upset and felt it wasn't fair we were keeping this money all for a hypothetical child when my nephew is an actual living person who will benefit from it. She said we won't struggle financially with a new child since we both earn a good income and we can always save more money. Which is true, but there's no guarantee we'll always be making the same income with the state of the world, and at least that money is there now. She kept pushing this to the point where it was becoming an argument. What struck a nerve was when my sister said, "It's not like anyone else is using that money right now." I don't know why it bothered me. I suppose it's the way she casually mentioned my son no longer being with us. My wife was growing uncomfortable with the whole thing, so I firmly said no, and that's the end of it. There was tension after and my sister was in a sour mood until they left. I later received a message from her later on stating how selfish she thinks we are being, and she thought we would help Steven since we claim to love him so much, yet won't help him provide for his future. I didn't want to get into it with her and decided not to respond. But I still keep reading her text. Are we in any way being idiots here? We do love Steven and want him to succeed, but we had already agreed that money would be used for our future child. It's all very conflicting and hard not to feel guilty over our choices. Not the idiot. Your sister though. If there was the most horrible idiot in the whole world award, she'd win. She knows you're still processing a tremendous loss and thought that this was the perfect time to spring this on you and lay the guilt trip heavy when you didn't immediately cave. Screw her. You're not the selfish one. She is. Selfish, cold-hearted. She told you that you must not love your nephew otherwise you'd give him the money. Well, by that logic, she doesn't love her own child, otherwise she would have started saving for his education years ago. Do not give Steven Ryan's college fund. Your sister's entitlement is truly beyond belief. That money is yours to use for your future child, or if you don't have another child, for your early retirement if you wish. You're by no means obligated to give the money away to your nephew just because he could use it. What was your sister's plan for Steven if Ryan didn't pass? They would have had to take out loans or apply for financial aid anyway, or go to a more affordable community or state college. Not the idiot. Deep down you know that. Your sister is on the other hand. It's her responsibility to pay her son's college, not you. Stand firm on your no. And if you do decide to have another baby, I hope it goes well for you and your wife. I'm sorry for the loss of your son. Also, delete the text, you don't need to keep reading it, block your sister if necessary. When I, 26, was 14, my parents went through a rough patch. My mom was diagnosed with cancer and went through chemo and lost her job. My dad reacted by loving several of the interns at the company he worked for, as well as starting a relationship with one who was at the time 21. My dad was in his late 40s. He told her he was divorced and looking for something serious and ended up living with her and her 3-year-old son for 2-3 days a week while mom was in hospital. My mom ultimately recovered, found out what had happened and filed for divorce. Because of my mom's poor health and lack of job, dad got majority custody of me and we ended up moving into his girlfriend's house. Girlfriend was told that mom was on the verge of dying and that was why dad now had custody of me. At no point was she aware of what was going on. She ended up getting pregnant shortly after I moved in despite being on birth control. I suspect my dad swapped her pills so that she couldn't kick him out if she found out what was really happening. About the time that the baby was born, Mum got a job working at a local hospital in her old field, cardiac surgeon. This job came with a considerable paycheck and great insurance and other benefits for her and her family. Meanwhile, the baby was born with Downs, and these two factors led Dad to dropping the affair partner like a hot coal and begging Mum to take him back. She agreed so long as the affair partner was cut out of his life completely. We ended up moving back in with Mum shortly after I turned 17. The affair partner, Sarah, ended up losing her job with the company because my dad slandered her to several higher-ups. I don't know exactly how all this went down. I am not going to get into the company's decisions, and she had to move back in with her parents with her then 6-year-old son and my 2-year-old half-sister. I was absolutely furious with both my parents, Dad because I'd really liked Sarah and I'd always wanted siblings and loved her son and my half-sister, and Mum for taking Dad back when he was opposed. I moved out around 6 months later when I went to university and reached out to Sarah. At that time I was studying at a university near her parents and regularly went around for dinner, babysat or helped out around the house. Sarah ended up getting a job at a bank and moved into a 3-bedroom place, and I moved in with her since it was within 20 minutes walk of my university and she gave me cheap rent in exchange for helping with my brother and sister. My parents lived 6 hours away. I deliberately picked a faraway university so I could go low contact. Anyway. It's been almost 12 years and my mum has been told her cancer is back. She reached out to me and said she wanted more of a relationship with me, but only on the condition I cut Sarah out. I refused. Am I the idiot here? I feel bad that she may die without me being there, and it wasn't her fault in the first place, but I adore Sarah and my siblings and refuse to dump them like Dad did. You now have a permanent tie to Sarah as you have a half-sibling, plus the fact that you love her. The way your father has treated women is despicable, but your mother's willingness to have him back is a mind-bender. Whatever their dynamic is, though, they have no voice in your relationship with Sarah and siblings. It is sad that your mother's health problems have returned, but she can't blackmail you into a relationship. It's not fair and it's not right, not the idiot. And good for you for being your own person and maintaining a relationship with your siblings and Sarah. I bet Sarah adores you right back. This whole situation is just a crap show. Your dad is the biggest idiot by far, your mom is confusing. Why take back a man that cheated on you during the time you needed them the most and sadly might do it again since she's back sick? You're stuck in the middle along with the other siblings and the stepmom. I feel bad for her honestly, she was just the innocent person that got the back end of the stick. Not the idiot. I'd probably keep a relationship with her too. It is amazing that you have turned out as caring and supportive as you have given the people who raised you. Idiot doesn't even come close to it, but the rules prevent me from using the language that would most accurately describe your parents. Obviously your father is the biggest idiot in the world, but your mother's attempts to manipulate people into cutting others out of their lives, including a child with special needs, at the very least merit the title of Duchess. My grandmother passed away 3.5 years ago of cancer. She was the rock of the family, and her loss hit everybody hard. My older sister, at the time, was estranged and wasn't in contact with the family. A few weeks before my grandmother passed away, she gave me her wedding ring and made me promise to hold on to it until I got married and wore it myself. Eventually, my sister came back around and was obviously devastated to hear about our grandmother's death. She didn't seem too bothered with me having the ring at first, but recently, she's gotten engaged to her fiancé and wants the ring. My sister, apparently, told her fiancé that she was going to get the ring, and so he didn't bother with anything but a cheap simple gold band. She approached me the other day and said that she wants the ring, but I was obviously not going to give it up. My sister essentially told me that she deserves the ring since she was a better granddaughter and that she's getting married first, so she is entitled to it just by that fact. I am dead set on keeping it because, obviously, it's my grandmother's ring and I want it for when I get married. Just to be clear, I have a boyfriend, but we're going slow. Am I being an idiot for not giving up the ring? Not the idiot. Your grandmother gave the ring to you without conditions. She didn't say to hold it and that the first of you to get engaged gets it. She didn't say that, if your sister comes around, that the two of you should flip a coin for ownership. Your grandmother gave the ring to you and did not specify any conditions. Ignore your sister's tantrums. I would out the ring in a safety deposit box so she can't physically get to it. If she was the better granddaughter, Grandma would have found a way to get it to her, estranged or not. Or put it in the will for after she was gone. She wanted you to have it, therefore it's yours. Doesn't matter who's older or who gets engaged first or feels entitled to it. It's yours. The fact that she didn't even really ask, but rather demanded and expected you to just hand it over speaks volumes of her selfishness. Not the idiot. She's trying to make crap up about what Grandma would want, even though Grandma already made her wishes clear, and so much, so she made you promise. Also baffled by this better granddaughter nonsense. It generally isn't a competition, but how does that logic even work when she was estranged from the family? Your sister is trying to guilt you into it. You are not being an idiot, but she certainly is. The day was my daughter's 16th birthday, but due to everything going on we couldn't have the party we had planned, so I told her she can pick 6 people to be there and I wouldn't be offended as to who she wanted there. But she ended up picking my parents, my husband's parents, her boyfriend and her best friend. The plan was to have a small celebration in replace to her birthday party, with pizza and cake, and then a bonfire. My daughter wanted to wear the dress we picked out back in April, in hopes that things would have been normal by now, because it was really the only thing she could keep from her original plan. It was just a dress, it was really nice, and I thought it was a decent length, not that it really mattered. My in-laws came over early, and when my daughter came downstairs my father-in-law said, "Don't you think that's a little short?" I looked at him and said that it was fine, and she looked beautiful. He shrugged his shoulders and said, "I wouldn't have let my husband's sister wear that at my daughter's age, but she wasn't girly, so I guess I didn't have to worry about that," and then chuckled. My daughter obviously looked uncomfortable, so I asked her to come with me into the kitchen to help get a fruit platter out and reassured her that she looked fine. My husband asked his dad to stop and things were going okay. When my daughter's boyfriend arrived and she introduced him to my in-laws, my parents had already met him. My husband's father said, "Oh, now there's boys here. I really hope there's shorts under that dress." My daughter's face got really red and I asked my father-in-law to stop or I'm going to ask him to leave, as he was making my daughter feel uncomfortable. He replied with, "Well, that's just my opinion. I don't think it's appropriate to wear, especially with boys around." I then asked him to leave because at this point my daughter was getting even more upset. My husband and his mother gave me an "Are you serious?" look and then my in-laws just got up and left. My husband thinks I made a big deal out of nothing and we've been inside arguing while my daughter is currently outside trying to enjoy herself. I feel like maybe what I did was unnecessary, but he was also making my daughter uncomfortable and the way he was speaking to her was not okay. Not the idiot, you protected your child from an idiot. Your husband on the other hand can go live with his creep dad if he wants to defend him. Women get harassed no matter what they're wearing, they shouldn't have to be uncomfortable around people who are supposed to love and protect them. Also, grandfathers shouldn't do such horrible things to their grandchildren. Your father-in-law owes her a major apology. Screw that guy. Opinions aren't inherently valid and you don't get to spew your idiocy anywhere you want without consequence. You have fair warning multiple times. He chose not to heed them. Your husband is a coward for trying to keep the peace before protecting his daughter's mental health. Not the idiot. At the end of the day your daughter will remember how you both reacted. She will remember that her mom stood up for her even when it was already discussed, and she will remember that her father got more upset about his dad getting kicked out than about his dad talking things about her. I highly recommend you talk to your husband and make sure he at least fully realizes the impact of his inaction. You are the one teaching her that being harassed isn't acceptable no matter who it's coming from. He is accidentally sending that age-old message that she should grin and bear it. I called my daughter's father to check up on her, and when I called I heard a woman in the back. I thought it was his mom or sister and told him to tell them I said hello. He said it wasn't them and then tried to change the subject. I asked who it was then, and he said it wasn't my business and to not worry about it. I said that I didn't care who he hangs out with, but it becomes my business when that person is around our 2-year-old daughter. Eventually it came out that this was his girlfriend, and I asked if I could meet her, if she was going to be around our daughter, or if he could maybe have her come by another day when my daughter isn't there, and if he couldn't do that, then I'd feel more comfortable if my daughter came home with me. We previously agreed to wait until he met my boyfriend before bringing him around my daughter, and even then I waited until I was in a relationship with him for 6 months before allowing him into my home when my daughter was there. He got angry, told me to mind my business, and then hung up on me. I texted his mom and sister and asked if they knew her and could vouch for her before making any irrational decisions, but they hadn't even met this woman yet. I texted my daughter's father asking again if I could meet her because I didn't want to take time away from them, but he just opened my messages and never responded. I eventually went over there, and when I got there his girlfriend opened the door while holding my daughter and her father was upstairs doing whatever. I told him I was taking her home because I asked that he'd let me meet this woman, and not only did he ignore me and tell me no, but he allowed our daughter to be by herself with her while he was upstairs for however long. I really don't care about who he has in his own home, but I do care who is around my daughter, especially when she is at an age where she can barely speak for herself. He is angry with me and says I shouldn't have ever taken time away from him and his daughter, and I do feel bad for doing so, but he also refused to let me meet someone who was alone with my daughter, and I know he would be the same way if this was the other way around. We don't have a legal custody agreement and just sort of came up with a verbal one. Maybe I'm wrong here, but even with a legal custody agreement, isn't it completely up to your ex who he introduces to your children on his own time? If the custody agreement allows any alone time at all with your ex, isn't that implicitly stating they're responsible enough to care for the child alone? And thus should be allowed to make the judgment call on who they can have around. I've never heard of a court order that forbids an ex from exposing a child to any new romantic partners in the absence of concerns over the child's health. But yes, he's a hypocrite for requiring an approval of your new partner and completely disregarding that on his end. You're the idiot. He's an adult that can decide who is involved in his life and by extension his daughter's. If his judgment is so poor that he is incapable of making decisions regarding his daughter's safety in his care, then you should probably take him to court to prevent him from having any custody. This is just controlling. You're the idiot for 2 reasons. First, because what you're saying implies that you get a say in his parenting choices during his scheduled time. You don't. For example, let's say you didn't like his girlfriend, should you be allowed to ban her from his place when your daughter is there? No more than he should be able to ban your boyfriend from your place when you have your time with her. Second, and more important, he is her primary carer during his scheduled time, and you took her from him without his consent. Imagine he showed up at your door and without talking to you, he took her. That's cruel, and it's what you've done to him.